Hello everyone, I'm Bruffy1322 and welcome to the 8th round of Season 2 of the GTA Online Multi-Class Endurance Championship. This round takes place back on the Los Santos Grand Prix circuit and we'll be using sports cars, with GT1 drivers in Massacro Racecars, GT2 drivers in regular Jesters, and GT3 drivers in Comets. So in the previous round we had Sport B, which were the slower half of the sports class. Now we've got Sport A, which are some of the quicker cars in the sports class this time. And a defining characteristic about all of them is that they are all reasonably close on pace. So as I've mentioned in previous episodes, you know, sometimes we have classes that are very far apart where you've got big differences in lap time between the classes. Sometimes we don't. Sometimes we have it where they're very close together, and this is one of those times. So because this is the 8th round of the championship, only your best 8 rounds, your best 8 point scores count for the championship. So that basically means that there is a possibility that the championship in GT1 and GT2 can be decided in this round. Basically, what if Craig 9876 in GT1 finishes in first or second in his class, he will win the championship for GT1. And the same also goes for myself. If I can finish in the top 4 in GT2, I will have secured the GT2 championship 2 rounds early. So at this moment I was quite nervous, you know. Los Santos Grand Prix is probably one of my weakest circuits, and if there was any circuit that I was going to slip up on, it would probably have been this one. So I was very nervous at this point. I did have a good starting position in second place here, but it's a long race and there's certainly a lot that can happen with all of the cars being close on pace. So we've got a big gap between GT1 and GT2 for the start of the race. I will explain that, but as Shaggy sets the sticky bombs, we are all ready for the start. So quite a hectic start there, as you saw, and here it is from my perspective. So I do get a reasonably good start at the front of GT2 and I think I'm going to get up into first place here, but then Pardanias makes an even better start all the way on the left hand side there, gets into the lead. So I do manage to get into second place from initially, well, really being third at that point, and now I'm trying to make a good start, because that's something that I've been strong with all the way through the championship. My good start and being able to make positions at the start has been what's allowed me to get these good positions by the end of the race. So that's all I'm doing at this point. There's an ailing GT1 car there who's a bit slow. That allows me to get a run up the inside here of Pardanias, and I managed to get into the lead of GT2. Now it's definitely not over yet, because the thing that we've got about this round is that the GT2 cars are actually quicker on this track than the GT1 cars. Now that's not something that we envisaged. That's not something that you know, I set out to have be the case when I created the classes and put the cars in. It's just that this is the way that it's happened to work out on this track on this day, with all of the bumps that really help the Jester. The idea that the Jester is more consistent than the Massacro race car in general. It all adds up to the point that over a single lap, the GT2 cars are actually quicker than the GT1 cars. So that was a hairy moment there when I almost went into those crashing GT1 cars. So close to actually hitting them there. It was very lucky that I didn't. I was pretty much on full lock there as well. So I've made up a few positions overall in the overall standings, but there is a very good chance in this race that a GT2 driver could win, because in terms of best laps, you're looking at about a 2-second per lap difference between the Jester and the Massacro race car when you're looking at sort of the best laps from everybody. Now, not everybody in the race does the best lap, so we're going to have a big mix-up. Even some of the Comets were quicker than some of the Jesters, and indeed some of the GT1 cars as well. So we're going to have a big mix-up between the classes, and it's going to be very interesting to see who wins in terms of, and where people come in terms of their overall positions. Now, at this point, I've got Uchiha behind me, who's a reserve driver in GT2 this week, and he just overtakes me for the lead there, but he's got the outside line, so I managed to defend the inside and retake him for the lead. Now, we've got a bit of a gap to everybody else in GT2 at this point, and here we are from Shaggy's perspective, but we are fighting for the lead. Now, we've got GT1 cars ahead of us as well, and we are going to start catching those up, because the Jester is just a little bit quicker than the Massacro race car on this track. Now, this is actually the shortest lap times that we're going to have throughout the whole championship, really. We do 45 laps of this track. That's the most that we do across any of the races in the championship. That's because we're using basically the second quickest cars that we use throughout the whole championship on the shortest track. So it's very, very hectic, you know. There's a lot of mistakes that can be made here. I've got my teammate in GT1 just ahead of me. He actually lets me go here in a sort of smart move, because he knows that I'm going to be quicker than him at this point, because, you know, just the way that the classes have worked out. And I've got this is the tricky part about this race, because it's a little bit different to the other ones insofar as that in GT2 we're kind of acting like the GT1 cars normally do, in that we are going to be overtaking people and not getting overtaken. You know, the defining characteristic about GT2 is that we get lapped by the GT1 traffic as much as we are lapping the GT3 traffic. In this case, we're actually quicker than the other two classes, so we're going to be lapping all of them, which is more akin to what the GT1 drivers are used to. And the GT1 drivers themselves have to get used to the idea that they aren't the quickest cars on the track anymore. So at this point, you know, I've made up a few positions, and there's Chris D there who'd made a mistake, so I'm up into 5th place overall at this point, aiming to try and get his in. And I don't know what we will actually see what happens there, but at the time I just didn't have a clue what had happened, because it seemed to me like I had got a clean overtake and then I just get rammed in the back. As it turns out, it was Uchiha who is currently just ahead in 2nd place there in 1st place, sorry, of GT2, who basically left his braking a little bit too late, went into the back of Chris, who then went into the back of me. As it turns out, I'm not sure whether Uchiha actually let me go there or made a mistake himself on that corner, but basically I retake the lead by getting a better run out of that corner, and now I'm once again defending from him for the lead of GT2. But again, we've got these GT1 cars ahead of us. Now we're trying to overtake these because we need to get past them, because, you know, we are quicker than them. So at the minute I'm up into 6th place overall. I get ahead of Hizen here, as you'll see, and Uchiha and Nismo in fact are right behind me as well. So the top 3 in GT2 are all very, very close together, all fighting for overall position amongst all of the GT1 cars as well, which is very, very different and very, very tricky to negotiate. Thankfully, I've managed to sort of get through all of that and remain in the lead of GT2, sorry. And at that point, I believe Nismo and Uchiha have a bit of a coming together in that area, which just gives me a little bit of breathing space. Not much, but just a little bit to try and settle in. Having said that, I definitely don't settle into this race until about an hour into it. You know, I was so nervous because I needed to make sure I got that 4th position for the championship, and I don't drive anywhere near as well as what I know that I can in these cars. But I will sort of come on to that later on, because the first sort of half of the race isn't too bad. So as you can see here, Chris makes another mistake and I managed to get ahead of him, and that puts me up into 4th place overall. So ahead of us we've got Craig, Mayor Ryan and Abe Gunners in 1st, 2nd and 3rd in GT1 and overall, but then I've managed to make my way up into 4th place overall, which is quite unusual for being in the GT2 class. You know, that's not something that we're all used to. So whilst we see this sort of view from Shaggy's perspective, it was just a great shot where you can see sort of the flow of the racing line in some areas as well. I will explain that, you know, I've mentioned this before in previous episodes, that we do have different ways that classes can be mixed up. You know, sometimes the GT1 cars and the GT2 cars are very much quicker than the GT3 cars. Sometimes there's a big gap between all three of them and there's lots of lapping going on. And sometimes they're very close together, such as on Olympic Grand Prix where in the rain we had the Sentinels and the Sentinel XSs, for example. They were all very, very close together. Now this is the first time that we've had it where the GT2 cars are actually quicker than the GT1 cars. Now that's not something by design, you know. That's not something that we really, you know, I really wanted to be the case. It's just that that's how it worked out. That's just how it seemed to be for this round, that the Jester reacted very well to the bumps on Los Santos Grand Prix. There isn't a lot of wide open space where the Massacro can really let its top speed out. It just so happened that the regular Jester was quicker than the Massacro race car. It's not something that we kind of envisaged, but we all had to deal with it, and that's something that we, you know, just another facet to the championship, another area that we all had to sort of adapt to, and that's the whole point of a championship like this, adapting to different things. So we're going to go back and look at the start now from different classes. First of all, we've got the GT1 class. Now, as normal, we've got pretty much, as we saw last week, Mayor Ryan and Craig 9876, the two guys who were battling all the way through the race last week, pretty much have the same sort of story this week as well. So at the start, obviously the hairpin does pose a little bit of a challenge. It is a little bit of a mess, but it's not too bad, and they both managed to get through nicely, and they're currently in second and third behind Chris D22, who's in the lead. As we saw from my perspective, he does end up losing that, and we'll see how he manages and ends up doing that. But at the start of the race, they've both got pretty decent starts considering their starting positions, keeping out of trouble as much as possible, making up positions, and now they're ready to sort of push on and start the rest of the race from here essentially. Now we are going to see all of the other classes, including GT1, from a number of different perspectives, and we haven't done this since pretty much the first round of the championship. Now this is basically because I had so much footage. You know, I had so much footage for this round. It was absolutely incredible. Obviously with people, you know, recording their own races a lot more, everybody sends me footage. Now I love that because it allows me to give you guys as much of information as possible about what happened in the race, but it also means that I can't tell the story from everyone. You know, we've got 27 people in this race in 3 different classes. It's very hard for me to be able to tell the entire story from everyone. Everybody's got their own little story to tell for the race because so much happens. So it is a shame that I can't do that, and sometimes I feel guilty if I can't use footage, but I try to use as much as I can and basically give you guys as much of a story and give you guys the most interesting parts of the race from as many different perspectives as I possibly can, whilst not making the video sort of 24 hours long by featuring it all. So as you saw there, you know, Mayor Ryan managed to get ahead of Chris going down into the hairpin, and Craig got a better run out of the longer hairpin to get the position there. So Chris has now been moved into 3rd place, and this is where he has that little bit of an incident that you saw the end of earlier. As you can see there, just catches the sort of middle part of the road there, and this is where I come up on the outside and overtake him as well. This is also just before the incident that we saw earlier, and that's what you're going to see from his perspective. You'll basically see that he gets hit into the back by Uchiha, who was currently in 2nd place there, and that goes into the back of me and just causes all of the incident that we saw there. Luckily for him, he actually gets through it quite well, but yeah, we all don't, and obviously you saw it from my perspective. Now, we're going to go on to a totally different thing that we haven't seen since round 1, which is basically showing 4 different perspectives all at the same time, and we're going to focus on GT1 first. We've got Chris D22 in the top left, Massacro in the top right, Jonty 500 in the bottom left, and VXWK95 in the bottom right. So this is, you know, it's going to be hard to focus on all of these at the same time. Obviously you're welcome to just, you know, go back and watch all of these from different perspectives if you want, but a lot of the time people in these pictures, in these bits of footage, are all quite close together. So as you can see in the top right, Massacro makes a little bit of an error there from 1st position. He did get a good start, and then we've got basically all 3, the top right bottom right and bottom left all close together on the same part of the track. So it is hectic. The reason that I'm doing this is to, on the one hand, to show you something from as many different perspectives as possible, but also to sort of give you guys the idea of how hectic it can be at the start of a race, especially something like this where, you know, a lot of things are on the line, people are nervous, things like that. And in general, at the start of a race, you want to just try and take it easy a little bit. You know, so often you see in random races that we do on stream or whatever, people just go too hard. You know, if someone's in front of you at the start of a race, you can't just, oh, and there's the incident in the top right that caused me to that I just to say managed to miss, and I'm glad I did, because I would have got caught up into all of that mess there. But yeah, at the start of a race, you know, if someone's in front of you, you can't take your normal braking point. You have to brake a little bit earlier, and you see it so often that people will just brake far too late at the start of a race and go into the back of a big bunch of people. You've just got to be a little bit more cautious at the start of a race, because any contact that you make by doing that is all your fault, you know. So it is a fine art to get down, and you do have to practice the starts of races to get that down. But obviously all of the guys here are reasonably well versed in it now, and that's why we don't see quite as many incidents as what you might expect from sort of a random race. So that's the first lap from the GT1 perspective, from 4 different people in GT1, and now we're going to focus on the first lap from 4 different people in GT2. In the top left we're going to have Nismo97, in the top right we're going to have Pardanias, bottom left we're going to have Moosted, and bottom right is going to be Zenzi23. So again, it's the same sort of thing, you know. It's the start of a race is very hectic, but you can certainly as long as everybody knows what they're doing, get away with it and have a clean start. So Pardanias, as you saw in the top right, got a really good start, you know, and this is where I start trying to overtake him. I'm just behind him at this point. Zenzi in the bottom right did get a little bit turned around there by Camp Colin, but manages to recover a bit. And this is where it's all at, you know. We've got Nismo in the top left, just behind Moosted in the bottom left, all very close together. Pardanias gets a little bit balked there by the GT1 car, which allows me to get up the inside, as you can see. And now he's got all of the other guys behind him as well. As you know, it's so hectic the start of a race. The very first lap, everybody is close together. Everybody's trying to make up positions. That's one of what I feel has been one of my strengths, has been the starts of a race. I've generally been in, I'm fairly certain that I've been in the lead of every single race, you know, so far. Although I haven't won every race, I've at some point been in the lead, and that's pretty much all because of the way that I've started those races. I've not got it caught up into incidents. And this is where you'll see the incident that happened behind me. You know, I just missed I just miss it, and then everybody gets caught up in it, as you can see there. I think Zenzi looks back at the exact wrong moment. You know, you could feel free to, as I said, you know, go back and look at this again from all the different perspectives. But yeah, when those 2 GT1 cars crashed, I really did get lucky to miss that, because it did cause a lot of incidents behind. But yeah, at the start, you know, my starts have been one of the strengths throughout this championship, that I've been able to sort of pick my way through people, get overtakes done, but not get caught up in incidents or not turn people around, things like that. And that's what's really helped me make up quite a few positions at the start and do well in these races in general. So here we are, you know, Nismo has managed to have a reasonably good first lap. He started actually at the back of the grid, and now he's up into 3rd in GT2. Moosted isn't too far behind him, and then we've got Zenzi and Pardanias also coming across the line. Now, obviously, we're going to look at the GT3 class next. Again, it's quite amazing that we can do this, you know, and bring. I really like the fact that I can bring you guys all of this different perspective of the race. In the top left, we're going to have Smithy 112. The top right is going to be 40. In the bottom left, we've got Thel 46, and the bottom right is Jay Santos. So the start of GT3, I think there was a problem with the sticky bomb, or not a lot of people could see it. So it was quite an interesting start, sort of a staggered start there, where a few people got off better than others. Now, as you can see, we've got 40 in the top right, who's in the lead at the moment. Thel is overtaking him there, as you can see, and then Smithy is just behind him here. So these guys are now getting caught up at the back end of the GT2 field. Now the GT2 cars are actually quicker than the GT3 cars, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the drivers in the GT2 cars are going to be quicker. And obviously if they get caught up in incidents, then you know that all goes to it as well. So we've got 40, Thel and Smithy 112 all fighting for the lead of the race at this point in GT3. Smithy actually manages to get ahead of 40 here, so does Thel, but now all three of them are fighting for the lead, as you can see from the three different perspectives there, whilst Jay Santos in the bottom right is basically trying his best to sort of keep out of trouble and have a clean lap, which he actually does. He does a nice first lap from him as well. But yeah, the three perspectives that you're seeing on the top left, top right and bottom left are all fighting for first place in GT3 altogether. Smithy actually gets around all of them there, and when that incident happened with Thel and the GT2 car, and this is where he basically gets away at the front of the GT3 field. Now that they're catching up to the back end of that incident that we saw earlier as well with the GT1 cars. It's very, very hectic, you know, as I've always mentioned. It's very hectic. 40 is just managing to stay right on the back of Smithy 112, as you can see, but ultimately he does manage to start pulling away, and Smithy is able to even overtake some of the GT3, GT2 and GT1 cars as well, because he's just very, very quick in a Comet, let's put it that way. So yeah, that's how it is at the end of the first lap. Smithy is in the lead, 40 is in a close second place, and then we've got all of the rest of them just behind. I think Thel is in third, with I think Double isn't too far behind as well, and Jay Santos coming home doing a decent first lap performance as well there. So all things considered, it hasn't been too bad of a first lap all the way through. You know, it wasn't all that bad. And that's what you'd expect from drivers of such high caliber as they all are in this championship. So at the head of the GT1 field, you've got Craig and Mayor Ryan battling for first place, and Abe Gunners isn't too far behind in third. Overall, I'm in fourth place, but at the head of the GT1 field with Nismo, GT2 field, sorry, with Nismo just behind in second, and then Uchiha comes through in third place for GT2. With a lot more GT1 cars following there, and then there's Smithy 112 in the lead of GT3, mixing it up with the GT. In fact, he's ahead of pretty much all of the GT2 cars apart from the top three at that point. So he's doing a great job, and you know, everybody is just at this point settling into their positions. Obviously, we saw 40 go through there in second place in GT3, and then we've got James Nash and Thel fighting over third place in GT3 as well. So everybody's just trying to, you know, settle into the race, really settle into their positions. We're about 10 minutes into the race at this point, and things are going okay. You know, things are going well. From my perspective, you know, I'm in the lead of GT2, so I'm pretty happy with that. I am actually catching up to the top guys at this point overall, and this is where Abe Gunners, as he flashed by there, just makes a little bit of a mistake, which allows me to overtake him there, and now I'm up into third place overall, which is pretty high. You know, I don't think I've been that high throughout the entire race, the entire season. So overall, third place, that's a personal best high for me at this point. But obviously, you don't get a chance to do that much in GT2. But I've got Nismo right behind me. Now, as you saw from the previous shot, we both have a bit of a decent gap to Uchiha, who is in third place in GT2. So at this point, you know, I'm just defending from Nismo, you know, doing my thing. It's being quite successful. You know, I'm able to keep him behind me for a few laps. You know, I'm still not settled into the race really, and I certainly don't get settled in for quite a while. But I'm able to do a good job. Here I make a little bit of a mistake by putting on the power a little bit too early there, and almost run into the tree. Thankfully I managed to save it, but it does allow Nismo to get a run on me and get into the lead of GT2. Now at this point I'm thinking, okay, that's not too bad. I'm just going to try and follow him a little bit and carry on, put some pressure on. But then this happens. Can you believe that? At the time I couldn't believe it. I was astounded. Thankfully that pedestrian doesn't stay attached to my car for too long, Some stupid woman wanted an autograph or something too badly. But yeah, that really hurt me actually. That you know, nothing to do with me, but in terms of lap time, that hurt me. As you can see there, Uchiha is right behind me at this point. We did have a big gap to him, but because of that, I lost a lot of time. I lost a lot of time to Nismo first of all, who you know, I was right on his tail. I was going to just follow him for a while, and I lost a lot of time to Uchiha behind me, which was an absolute nightmare. So something that was totally out of my control. At the minute I'm defending from Uchiha, which I managed to do quite well, but then again another pedestrian on the right hand side there sends me into that tyre wall, and I end up in third place. So throughout the story of the sort of the first third of the race has been, I've got a good start and then ended up losing 2 positions, one through a little bit of a mistake, but then I lost a lot of time through no fault of my own, and then I lost a second position through no fault of my own, and then obviously a lamppost gets knocked over as well. You know, the first third of this race was a bit of a nightmare, but really it was through no fault of my own. It was just instances that happened around the track with pedestrians and lampposts, and that was quite frustrating. So now we're on board with the GT2 car of Nismo. Whilst all that's been happening, whilst I've been having those issues, he's been setting some really quick lap times, and he's actually been able to catch up to the leaders in GT1 of Craig and May Ryan. They are just ahead of him here, as you can see, and obviously he's in a quicker car, so you would expect that to be the case. But he makes a little bit of a mistake here, flips around a couple of times, and this becomes a bit of a story of this part of the race, because that isn't the only mistake that he makes. And you are going to see in this part of the video quite a few mistakes from Nismo, and that is uncharacteristic, you could say. Yes, he's made mistakes in the past, but this is kind of on another level. You do see a lot of mistakes right here, a lot of incidents. Some of the things aren't his fault. Sometimes he gets caught up with pedestrians and things like that, but from being right on the back end of the 2 leaders in GT1, he ends up back in 7th place, way off the pace, way off the lead, because of all the incidents that you're about to see. Lots of crashes, lots of incidents, and it brings a point that I want to sort of make, because this is an important part of the race, in terms of the race as a whole, in terms of what happened in the race. This is a very important part. Now, no driver is perfect. Nobody can. No driver. If any driver says that they're the best driver in the world and they're perfect, then it's the first instance that they've got to making a mistake and you know, not doing very well. You know, as soon as you believe that you're infallible, then you're going to have problems. No, Nismo doesn't think that, you know, but some people definitely do think that of other drivers. Now, Doodle was a perfect example of it. You know, Doodle was one of the drivers who everybody tipped to be sort of GT2 champion. Obviously, he had to pull out midway through the season, but the same sort of thing you see happening with Nismo as well. You know, no driver is perfect, and this is kind of showing it here. Now, the point that I want to make is that sometimes the track and the car and the driver all come together nicely to make a perfect package. For example, in the first round, I pretty much led from the start in the Vigero. I had the best lap. I pretty much won on raw pace. In the third round, I beat Doodle in a battle that we had. But in the second round, Doodle absolutely annihilated me on Los Santos Grand Prix in the prairies. The same thing we've seen with Nismo. You know, in the fourth round, you could say that I beat Nismo based on racecraft and not making mistakes. In the fifth round, back on Blaine County again, I was able to beat Nismo throughout raw pace because I had the best lap and I just led from start to finish. And then in some of the other rounds that we've seen more recently, Nismo has been able to beat me just as easily as Doodle did in the second round. So what I want to say here is that you can't basically say that one particular driver is overall better than somebody else. And you know, some people come up with these questions like, who's the best driver in Nonchalant Dominance, who's the best driver in Sweat Buckets, who's the best driver in any crew, or who's the best driver on GTA. you can't really answer that question, because on a specific day, on a specific track, with a specific car, anybody can beat anybody else. And this is the point where it really goes wrong for Nismo. He's obviously made all those mistakes. Even I managed to pass him at that point, even though I'd had issues myself. He ends up getting out of the car, missing a checkpoint. You know, he's been missing checkpoints around as well. And he basically at this point decides to come into the pits. Now, when he does come into the pits to repair his car, after he's done that, he is pretty much 40 seconds off the lead of the race. When you look at the timing system that he brings up, he's pretty much 40 seconds off the lead of the race, off the top guys, off Mayor Ryan and Craig, who are currently battling for the overall lead. He's 40 seconds behind. That is a lot, and that's pretty much just happened in the space of maybe 10 minutes of making mistake after mistake after mistake. He's way down. Now, coming back to the point that I was saying, that some drivers, some tracks and some cars just work together well, this is a case of that instance. So there's some times where you just have to sit back and applaud an incredible performance, and you're about to see basically the start of that incredible performance, and it features this man right here, Nismo 97. He's 40 seconds off the lead, as I mentioned. Just keep that in mind. He's 40 seconds off the lead, and we're already further than 30 minutes into the race. Just keep that in the back of your mind, because sometimes, honestly, you just have to sit back and applaud an incredible performance. Some drivers are just better with some tracks and some cars than others. You can't say that anybody overall is a better driver than anybody else. That's kind of what a championship is for. But in this instance, in this video, you just have to sit back and clap. So we'll come back onto that in a short while. Now for me, I've been pretty much, I was surprised when I saw Nismo, and I overtook him. And I was also surprised here when I saw Uchiha just in front of me. As you can see there, Uchiha is now inherited the lead of GT2, sorry, during that period. But he obviously made a mistake. I got caught up with traffic at this point because I'm now right behind him. Now this is the second third of the race, if you like, the middle third of the race. So if you take my race and split it up into 3 equal measures, half an hour each, obviously because these races are an hour and a half long, the first half an hour, as I mentioned, was kind of me having a reasonably decent performance, but getting caught out by pedestrians and getting caught out by lampposts, things that were sort of out of my own control. The middle third of the race is me getting caught out by things completely in my own control. I have a terrible middle part of the race. It's absolutely horrific. Now, I had a huge headache from real life racing on the morning. I was, you know, here's the driver's excuses straight away. Every racing driver has excuses. I'd been real life racing on the morning, so I was really tired, and my concentration just completely went in this middle third of the race, which was a real shame, because by the end of it, really, I could have been fighting for the overall lead if I hadn't made so many mistakes. But what you're going to see in the next sort of few clips and the next few minutes is just mistake after mistake after mistake from me. It's pretty much exactly the same as what we've just seen from Nismo, and this can affect anybody. You know, if you just lose a little bit of concentration, especially on a track like this, Los Santos Grand Prix, where there's so many chances to make mistakes, hit into barriers, you know, end up crashing with people, things like that. If you lose a little bit of concentration, it really will punish you. Now, I don't have quite as much of a meltdown as what you've just seen from Nismo. You know, mine kind of, I make consistent mistakes over the space of half an hour, whereas Nismo's was sort of lots of mistakes in the space of 10 minutes. But that was pretty much the first of them. You know, that was the very first one where I hit that inside barrier sort of thing that holds up the freeway. So that was the first of my mistakes, and that meant that I'd kind of lost out to Uchiha there. There's another one, end up hitting the lamppost there, missing the checkpoint. It was pretty bad. It was pretty rough to watch back, and I'm sure it was pretty rough to watch live as well, because I was getting frustrated. And it was just a total lack of concentration, you know, tiredness played a part as well, and just my concentration was gone. Now at this point I also think that I probably relaxed a little bit too much, because I did have quite a big gap to 4th place, who was Zenzi at the time. So I had a big gap. I was pretty much comfortable in 3rd position. And then Nismo made his error, and also Uchiha made his error as well, which meant that I was back fighting for the lead. But I just couldn't hold it, you know. I was making too many mistakes. So that led to the shot that you've just seen there, with me going through, and basically just behind me is Chris and Abe Gunners fighting for 3rd and 4th in GT1, and then we've got Nismo coming up on the both of them. So he's managed to catch up to all of us. Now that's not too difficult, because all of us were making mistakes really. Both the GT1 cars and myself were making pretty horrendous mistakes. But at this point Nismo is able to get through and get up into 6th place overall by overtaking Chris, whose car ends up, I believe, cutting out on him at that point, which was a bit of a shame. And then not too much later on that lap, he also manages to get ahead of Abe Gunners here. So he's been putting in some incredible lap times. Ever since he came in the pits and repaired his car, he's been on a mission, putting in some really quick lap times. As you can see there, gets up into 5th place overall. Now, it's not that difficult to catch up to me, given the state of my driving at the minute. I do manage to settle down a little bit, but ultimately he's able to catch up, and I do keep him behind for a little bit, you know, a little bit longer than the GT1 cars did at least, and I'm able to keep that gap reasonably consistent for a while. But ultimately, you know, I am in this phase of the race where I'm just making too many mistakes. That's where I make mine there, and he is able to get past me there. So Nismo is now up into 4th place overall. Having said that, at this stage, yes, he's got up into 4th, but he's still about 25 seconds off the lead. Now Uchiha, who is in 3rd place overall and is in the lead of GT2, is about 12.5 seconds off the lead. So they're pretty much equidistant apart from the two leaders of Mayor Ryan and Craig, who are still battling at the front of the GT1 field and the field in general. So at this point, you know, again, I made a mistake there, as you saw in that section that Shaggy was looking at, but I'm again just thinking, alright, I'll just stick with Nismo a little bit, try to sort of follow him and make my way through. But ultimately at this point Nismo does a much better job of getting through this traffic, this GT3 traffic that are all battling for 3rd place at the moment. I believe that's Thel, Double, S92 and James Nash all fighting for 3rd place in GT3. Nismo does a really good job, as you're basically seeing in the top left, of getting through all of this traffic, and it takes me another lap to do it. You know, I just my concentration isn't there. I'm not driving particularly well, particularly quick enough, and it just takes me a little bit too long to get through that traffic. So you will see a bit of a clip here of how I end up doing it, but it's just taken too long. And Nismo manages to get a gap at that point, and he's driving like a man possessed essentially. And I end up making a few more mistakes, and then that means I'm pretty much settled in 3rd place. So that's pretty much the few clips that you're about to see. You know, you end up seeing me make a few more mistakes, and that at that point I just sort of settled down into 3rd place. 3rd place was more than enough. You know, I had a huge gap over 4th place, and I had an even bigger gap over 5th place, and I only needed 4th place to secure the championship, and that's all I was really thinking about. That's all I was really worried about. So in the final half an hour of the race, the final third of the race, I actually drove quite well, and I was able to make up time on the leaders. It's just that at this point, you know, the middle third of the race really cost me. As you can see, things like that. That middle portion of the race is what really did cost me in terms of lap time. And it's funny how that works out, that it was pretty much exactly half an hour of doing not too badly but getting caught up with other errors, half an hour of just making my own mistakes, and then half an hour of driving pretty well. But yeah, it was that middle portion of the race that sort of ruined any chance I had of going for the overall lead by the end. Although I was quick in the last half an hour, I'd settled down quite nicely finally. It'd taken long enough, and I was putting in some good lap times and catching the leaders. I was just too far away for doing that, so I was pretty much settled in 3rd place in GT2 and 5th place overall. So whilst we're just watching a few sort of shots from Shaggy's perspective here, I just want to go back to the point that I was making earlier. You know, Nismo is a hell of a quick driver, and there are a lot of very, very quick drivers out there, but nobody is unbeatable. You know, if the conditions are right, as I've proven, I've been able to beat Nismo, I've been able to beat Dudo, once on Racecraft, once on raw pace. It just depends on whether for me personally, I'm one of those drivers who, in my opinion, I'm not going to be quick in every single car. You know, the conditions, the track, the vehicle selection, it has to kind of suit me for me to be able to do well, and that's just the way that I am, I would say. Nismo on the other hand is very quick in whatever he gets in. The same with Dudo as well from the earlier part of the championship, and a lot of other people who are very, very quick. You know, Nismo is not unbeatable though, Dudo is not unbeatable. If the conditions are right, nobody is unbeatable. People excel in different ways. Some people excel in much longer races, some people excel in shorter races, some people don't do very good in close quarters combat with people in Racecraft, other people are very, very good at that and need that to succeed. The difference in driving styles and the difference in driving characteristics of different people makes racing so much fun. You know, that's the whole point of doing it, trying to better yourself and trying to get on the level of some other people. And that's basically what you saw there was my final mistake of the entire race. So that's mistakes all over and done with. So I've been banging on about this, about different drivers not being unbeatable, because people have said in the past, you know, that Nismo gets beaten in other races. You know, and there's people out there that are quicker than Nismo. There's people out there that are quicker than Dudo. Yes, of course, there's people out there who are quicker than everybody. Everybody is on their day quicker than anybody else. It's such a variable thing. And just because you're quicker than someone on 9 days doesn't mean to say that on the 10th day you're also going to be quicker than them. It's all a variable sort of performance. And I just want to put that out there, that, you know, it isn't such a discrete sort of thing like that. It's not that one person is better than another. There's a lot that goes into it. Motorsport is such a huge field with all kinds of different aspects to it that it's not quite as simple as that. Having said that, this is one of those races where there is definitely one person who is better, and just significantly better than everybody else, and we will come on to that. At this point, Mayor Ryan has made a few mistakes at the head of the field, and also makes a mistake just up ahead here, which allows me to get up into 4th place overall. It doesn't matter in terms of my GT2 position, I'm still 3rd in GT2, but that basically means that Craig is sort of on his own at the head of the GT1 field, and he's still actually in the lead overall. As you can see here, coming through the shot, there he is, overtaking some back markers there. And then you've got Uchiha, who's just behind him, and look who's just behind him, Nismo. So Nismo has managed to catch up 25 seconds since he passed me in a very short number of laps. You can see Craig and Uchiha going past there, and Nismo just coming behind. Again, he's still been putting in some incredible lap times, still driving like a man possessed. And that has allowed him to basically catch up the same amount of distance that, you know, Uchiha was only 12 seconds behind Craig, and they are both, you know, as we've mentioned, the GT2 cars are actually quicker over a single lap. So Uchiha was only 12 seconds behind. In the same amount of time, Nismo has managed to catch up by 25 seconds. So that's how quick he's been in this race. That's how quick he's been ever since he came in for that pit stop, made all those mistakes. Now, here's someone that we haven't seen for a while. We will come back onto that lead battle because it is a battle for the overall lead between the three of them at this point. Here's someone that we haven't seen. Smithy112 in the head of GT3. The GT3 battle has been pretty much static all the way through. Smithy got into the lead and 40 was in second. And this is pretty much what it looks like to disconnect from the lead of a race. Unbelievable. how galling must that be? I think he was in 14th place overall. He was beating plenty of GT2 cars. He was even beating a few GT1 cars as well. And he unfortunately disconnects. And that's what it looks like from the other side of it. So very, 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 a huge shame there for Smithy112, who was in the lead of GT3 by a country mile, and basically ends up disconnecting, and 40 inherits that lead for GT3. We haven't focused on the GT3 cars that much again because it was pretty static all the way through. There was quite big gaps between the top three, but yeah, I just had to put that in there just to basically give you an update on what happened. So we're back with Nismo now, and as you can see here, he's caught up to the two leaders as Craig is basically defending for overall position from Uchiha. Nismo's managed to catch up and makes the overtake on Uchiha to get up into second place overall, but also first place in GT2. So Nismo takes the lead in GT2. Now, he's driving incredibly. I would love to show you all of the footage that I have. I really would, because it's absolutely amazing. He basically sent me his whole race, and I looked at sort of a middle part of it where I'm never going to sort of put that in a video like this because it's just basically him on his own putting in quick lap times. But the lap times that he's setting and the way that he's driving that car is mesmerizing. It's absolutely incredible to watch, and any sort of true motorsport fan would look at that and just appreciate what he's doing with that car, because it's absolutely incredible. So we're coming on here, 3 laps to go, well actually 4 laps to go. Nismo for the last couple of laps has been pressuring Craig, going for overtakes. They haven't necessarily been coming off. Craig's been doing actually a really good job of defending, but this is where the pressure tells, and finally Craig makes a mistake there, as you saw, going into that tyre. Uchiha gets caught up in it as well and ends up losing the overall lead. Now, in the end, it doesn't matter to either of their races. It didn't matter that Nismo got that overall lead. It didn't matter that Craig lost that overall lead, because they're in different classes anyway. The overall lead doesn't matter. They still kept the lead in their own individual classes. But as everybody wants to win the overall race, especially if you're in the fastest car, which Nismo was. So Uchiha actually manages to get ahead of Craig as well to get up into second place overall. But in the end, that's how it finishes. So, as I was saying, this is coming on to the final lap now, the final lap of the race. Nismo's performance in this race, you've just got to stand back and applaud, because it was absolutely incredible. I don't think anybody would have beaten him today. It doesn't matter what they could have done. Craig did an absolutely great performance in GT1 to try and hold him back for as long as possible when he'd eventually caught up. And it has to be remembered that Craig was in technically a slower car at that point as well, but it is quite easy to defend in the Massacro race car. But Nismo, if you remember, was 40 seconds behind the lead of the race. After all of those mistakes, he was 40 seconds behind, and he absolutely dominated the lap times. Uchiha was nowhere near that amount of distance behind, and still finished second to him in the same car. And that just shows you the difference in performance. He was just so much better than everybody else. And at the end of the race, I sort of said, very, very well done, Nismo. That was a fantastic race. That was absolutely brilliant. But I didn't really appreciate quite what he'd had to go through throughout the course of this race to get that win. He does get the overall victory, as we'll see. We'll see him come across the line soon. I'm obviously just coming up to lap Subaru here. I decided to stay behind him, but I managed to lap quite a few people, lap a few GT1s and GT2s as well, and basically finish in 4th place overall, which was nice. But here we are, Nismo coming over to finish in 1st place. Absolutely astounding performance, and just as a motorsport fan, I really have to give that to him, because it was absolutely incredible. What a comeback, what a great performance, and you can only stand back and applaud it, really. But ultimately, I did what I needed to do to get the championship in GT2. All I needed to do was finish in 4th. I ended up finishing in 3rd, and I have a little bit of a celebration at the end by flying off, as you can see there. I think I gave Shaggy a bit of a scare there as well. So in the GT1 battle, Craig was obviously the winner in GT1, with Mayor Ryan in 2nd and Chris D 22 in 3rd. Nismo got the win in GT2 and overall, with Uchiha in 2nd and myself in 3rd. And then we had 40 get the win in GT3, with double S92 in second and James Nash in third, with Alucard not too far behind as well. So for the podium, we decided to make sure that Nismo was in the middle, but also 40 took it upon himself to get his Comet and put it in the colours of Smithy 112's car, because it was such a shame that obviously Smithy had to disconnect. Well, didn't have to. It was such a shame that Smithy disconnected, and 40 sort of just inherited that win from that. So a really nice touch there from 40 by getting the colours of Smithy's car. Great performance from Nismo, and Craig also, by finishing in the lead of GT1, he managed to get the championship, wrap up the GT1 championship as well. So we've had the GT1 championship and the GT2 championships all wrapped up at this point. I was obviously very happy to be able to wrap up the GT2 championship two weeks early, and so was Craig in GT1. So it's all down to the GT3 battle now. The last two rounds are going to be supercars and sports cars again. The next round is going to be supercars on Olympic Grand Prix. It will be this Sunday. Obviously, leave all your comments down below about what you thought about this race. Did you enjoy it? If you enjoyed this, also check out Shaggy's Formula 1 Championship as well, which I'm being a cameraman for. The same sort of thing. I will leave a link in the description and at the end of the video. So again, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Be sure to watch the next round live on Twitch as well this Sunday. And yeah, be sure to leave a like if you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.